Yeah,
Here they come.
sure.
You're on screen share, Greg.
Yeah.
Okay, here they are.
Hello, everybody. Hello.
They're all muted.
Hi, Neil. Neil.
Good afternoon.
Hi, Neil. Hi, Janet. Hi, Brian.
Here comes Gaylan bringing her coffee.
Yep, or something.
Hi, Gaylan.
Oh, it's tea.
Brian, you
Hi,
are on
Janice.
mute. If you would
Hi,
unmute
Greg. How are you
yourself.
tonight?
Very good, thank you. Where's Rich?
Trying to do something on the computer real quick before he gets here.
Here comes Carl.
Hi,
Hi,
Carl.
Brian. Hi, Carl.
Hi, Brian.
Hi, I'm driving home through Portland traffic, so I'm just going to listen in.
Okay, Brian.
But thanks for having me.
Glad you came,
Welcome.
Brian. Nice to meet you.
Welcome, Brian.
Welcome, and be careful out there.
Yes. It looks like Carl's gotten a haircut.
Or he squished it down with his headphones.
Yeah, he's smiling. No, it's still long.
Who's got a haircut? Never.
Yeah.
Never.
I'm looking for.
I'm
I'm
trying
going
to
for the
get a
ponytail.
back online now, so I don't look so much like Dagwood.
What?
I got computer.
Oh, you're talking to the computer?
Hi, Sue.
Hi, Sue.
Hi, Sue.
They said
Hello,
hi to you,
Sue.
hon. They said hi to you.
Well, Brian, this must be really thrilling. As you come on, we wait for a few more people to come, and so we'll have something to say to you shortly.
Yeah, that's why you're just hearing some chatter, Brian.
Yeah.
Hang in with us.
Doesn't offend me any. I got another hour on the road, so you
Oh,
know.
my goodness.
Okay.
Oh,
Great
here
way to
comes
spend
Adair.
your travel, your commute.
Hi, Adair.
Have you two
Yep.
met?
Hello, Adairzy. Wow, look at that tree out there.
Yeah, isn't that
It's
pretty?
Willamette Valley. It's Willamette Valley. Sugar maple, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, shoot.
Janice, I'm going to mute you.
Yes.
Where did I see that? Let me see.
Galen, I'm going to go ahead and mute you too. And Neil, okay, you're already muted. Neil, it sounds like you got your audio fixed. Good job. Here comes my friend Bobby.
Hi, Bobby.
Hey, Bobby.
Hi, Bobby.
Bobby, give us a hello sign. No, a hello. Yeah. She's a ASL instructor.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Oh, nice.
Here comes my friend Ann. There's Miss
Hi,
Ann.
Ann.
Hi, Ann.
She has been very instrumental in helping me set up the PayPal and all the stuff for the bazaar.
Oh, cool.
My buddy Ann.
Good. Okay. You should see Adair's Christmas card she's made.
Yes, I saw them.
Did you see them? Yeah.
Mhm. We're saying hello to a Deborah Adderley. That name ring a bell with either of you?
Nope.
Okay.
Hi, Deborah. Where is Deborah?
Hello, Deborah.
She's not here yet.
Okay.
Oh, she didn't
There
like
she
my
is.
wire transfer.
Hi, Deborah.
Hi, Deborah.
Hi, Deborah. Your video is off.
Yeah, I got it on now.
There you
Hi,
go.
Here you go. Hi.
Hi.
Where are you calling in from?
Dallas.
Good. Deborah, good to have you.
Thanks.
Great. What we do is we mute everybody and then when you want to speak, we just ask you to unmute or you raise your hand or whatever, okay?
Okay.
So I'm going to go ahead and mute you. Oh, you muted yourself. There you go. Perfect. Okay. All right, we're at about 2 minutes after, guys. We've got 12. Do you want to wait a little bit longer?
We'll give it a couple more minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, wait a couple more minutes.
A couple more minutes. Everybody just get comfortable.
Yeah, get comfortable.
Get comfortable.
Now, everybody realize next week, we're back on standard time.
Good point there, Father Fred.
Get an extra hour of sleep Saturday.
That's right. That's right.
As you know, I've already set my clock in my kitchen though, Fred.
I
That's
know,
how
we
get
know
to our
that.
call. Here you go. Are you going to join us? Yeah, but not for another hour. Ooh.
Greg and I had a meeting set up on Tuesday, and so it was about 10 after 2, and the meeting was at 2. And I sent him a note, and he said, "Yeah, it's at 2, right?" And I said, "Yeah, it's 10 after 2." And then he came on pretty soon.
Yeah.
I think we might as well go ahead.
Yeah, might as well. I think so. Appreciate everybody's time. Good evening and welcome to conversation number 7. Number 7. Glad to have you back. And tonight the topic is about triggers, and it's about racial triggers for white people is basically it. And I just want to briefly share my screen to introduce a term that's part of this discussion about racism and racial triggers for white people. And essentially that's, what are those things that trigger us and make us have white fragility, make us feel anxious, have racial tension, racial anxiety. And there is a theory that's involves the term habitus. Habitus. I don't know if anybody's ever heard that before, but it's a theory, and it's a term that relates to not only our physical stature, but it's really about, as we talk about racism, it's the way we perceive and react to our world. It's our habitus. And scientists have it's a social sociology term, really. And it's about how we socialize our internal selves. And it creates this lens in our thinking and in our minds about how we see the world and see people and perceive things. It goes back to the first couple of conversations that we had, and we talked about how white people are socialized and conditioned, and that we into our racial views that we have. And habitus is part of that. In fact, this whole conversation topic tonight on the triggers for us really involves kind of things we've already talked about and that we've learned up to this point. It involves us kind of looking back at many of those concepts and terms that we have had conversations around, and now we're kind of using them to talk about the triggers that we have. And habitus is just one of those, the newer terms. And it's the way we perceive and react to the world. And it's a form of conditioning and socialization that really starts when we're young, and we get it and we develop it through where we go to school, how our families are organized, and the culture of our family and the areas in which we live. And habitus isn't a bad thing. It's just a concept in sociology of how we view the world. And it's our habitus and how we, in racial terms, view different races. So it's a form of socialization, and it is kind of the root of our reaction when we get racially uncomfortable. And white people aren't really comfortable talking about race, and I think you probably have felt that as you decided to sign up and do our conversations and then join us throughout the weeks. And there's times where it's not really that comfortable and you might feel a little anxiety, which is that racial anxiety that comes along. But when white people are confronted and triggered, oftentimes they get that feeling of anxiety. We call that racial anxiety. They get white fragility, which is what we talked about in that. It's what Robin DiAngelo describes as when we get immediately defensive. It's like, I'm not a racist. I'm colorblind, in fact, or I see everybody the same, which actually digs us deeper into our habitus and the way we see the world. It makes us feel like we're colorblind. And why is it this way? It's because we have been socialized and conditioned that talking about race is not appropriate. It's not really something you do. It's not, let's sit around the Thanksgiving table in a few weeks and talk about racism. Most people aren't really that comfortable doing it. And it depends on kind of how they were raised. It's back to that one session that I actually had led, and it was on the good, the bad binary. Remember that? We talked about that we view race as either good or bad, and we as white people oftentimes think as racism as a bad thing. And so we don't talk about it because it's bad. And I'm not racist because I'm not bad. And racism is immoral and is the thinking in the good, bad binary frame. And so I can't, I only see it as a good, bad choice, which stops us in our tracks to be able to really deal with and confront it when we see it, because we don't really even see it. It can be based out of fear or bitterness toward people of color. Question for you, do the police in this country have a fear of people that are Black? Is there evidence of that? My brother, as a young teenager, was in front of the Memorial Coliseum in Portland, and he was standing in line for a concert. And he's kind of head in the clouds looking around and people watching, because we lived in the suburbs. And he had his tickets in his hand, standing there looking out over the sea of people, and suddenly he felt those tickets go away out of his hand. He turned and looked, and it was a Black man had grabbed the tickets and took off running. To this day, I would submit that my brother, I love him dearly. He's not intentionally racist, but he has a fear. He has an anxiety because of that incident. If he sees a Black person, he thinks of that incident. He was a victim. Black people are criminal. They are to be feared, perhaps. And it triggers him. It triggers him. The nation was triggered when George Floyd died. When we saw that as white people, we were triggered. We were stopped. Our habitus was interrupted. Our comfortable habitus of like, I'm not a racist. But most of us saw that event and said, that is enough. And we're triggered, right? So think of these triggers. They can be positive for change. They can also be negative in that they stop us in our tracks. We want to just change the subject, and I just want to, let's talk about something else. So it can happen. It comes from a lot of socialization throughout our lives. We have misconceptions about being objective. We think, oh, well, I can be objective. I can see through race and colors, and I'm not really. I don't have a problem with being sorting through the maze of racism in America because I am objective. When the reality is, due to our habitus and our socialization, we're really not very good at that. We're really not. We have all this other noise that goes on. And here's one for you to think about: is why we have these triggers and we get sensitive. Is that as white people, we are pretty heavily invested in this system that has benefited us. And other people of color, BIPOC, have a whole different habitus of that. They have a whole different habitus of that. They see it as very unfair. And so the system can benefit us as white people, and we're conditioned that it's fair. Or if you dig deep and start peeling back the onion, you might start feeling a little bit, some people might feel threatened that system has always been a white system. And your thought is that that's the way it should be. So we've kind of adopted a sense of superiority, perhaps, unintentional maybe, and a right to rule as white people. And when I wrote my notes on this one, white culture, in my opinion, has anti-Black sentiment baked in. Mm-hmm. It's baked in. And so how do we do that? So being triggered is not necessarily a bad thing, can be positive. And what we're learning in our group and our cohort through these conversations is really how to be sensitive to that. And we are teaching and learning a new language of anti-racism. And let me share you what that is. It's to increase our knowledge of the truth and to reorient ourselves to understand the workings of racism and how it really impacts BIPOC, people of color. And we are learning to practice racial humility. That's a new term in language, to learn and practice racial empathy, to learn this language and the terms and the basics of anti-racism, such as what does it mean to be, what is white fragility? What's white privilege? What's white supremacy? What is racism? Once you admit it and admit how we are racist, it's easier to talk about. That's my thought. Systemic racism. What does that mean? We've learned what that is. Racial empathy and racial humility. To me, those are gateways for change and for really learning this new language of anti-racism. If you can learn to understand and be humble and to put down your defenses and to recognize your triggers of racial anxiety, white fragility, and to practice humility and say, I don't know it all. I am unintentionally racist. I don't want to be. I want to learn more. That's racial humility. And then we have empathy in being able to look at what does it feel like for Yvette Shepard, Sergeant Shepard, to go out as a Black woman, a trooper, and enforce the law in a white world? What's that like? That's empathy. Let's walk her in her boots, her boots. The term anti-Blackness, she taught us about that, and that is just part of this new language of understanding and application so we can understand our practices and do what we can to disrupt it when we see it. So it's about being brave, being courageous, getting comfortable with openly using that language of anti-racism and not softening the words. And I laugh because 2 sessions, maybe 3 sessions ago, we went through this great discussion and we were talking about, remember, racism, and maybe it was the good bad binary, and we felt, some of us, that we wanted to change that word. Let's make it different because I don't like the term racism. And then we quickly came back and said, no, we've got to call it what it is. If we're going to be fair, we're going to be honest, we're going to make change. Racism is racism. Let's get comfortable saying it. I have been racist. Racism exists. It is systemic. Not everywhere, but there are some institutions that we've really got to take a look at. So that's a quick sermon on some of the concept of habitus and triggers, and I'm going to give it to Fred to kind of cue it up for the conversations we're going to have relative to habitus and how we get interrupted. How does our comfortable little habitus get interrupted with racist talk? Father Fred.
Thank you, Greg. I'd like to ask you all to pretend for a minute that I'm a salesman, okay? And I'm standing on your doorstep, and I've knocked on the door, and I've backed up. I'm being socially aware of the distance and everything. You open your door, and I tell you that I am an insulation salesman, and I would like to sell you insulation. What does that mean? Lori, can you, I'd like to ask just 3 or 4 people to tell me what insulation is that I'm trying to sell in one word.
Yeah, everybody, if you'd like to comment on this, just unmute yourselves, please, and just jump in.
Can somebody tell me what insulation is?
Well, my bias is against salesmen. I'd say it's a scam.
Okay, all right. And it might be. Anybody else?
I'd say it's a protection.
Okay, all right, good. Anybody else?
It's a barrier.
It's a barrier, okay.
Something that would increase the R value of your home.
Okay, good, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let me, and okay, I've sold you the insulation. Now, if you go through your house, you're going to see pipes that you have, they're insulated. And there's wiring that has insulation on it. Well, let's broaden that a bit and talk about what insulated protection for the poor and working class whites. Let's make this a societal issue now. Is there insulated protection for the poor and working class whites?
No.
You want to elaborate on that, Caprice?
I think that they are vulnerable. They're exposed.
Okay.
I don't think they've got the protection that they might need.
All right. Okay. Anybody else? The interesting thing is, okay, working class whites, we know the color here. But who are we talking about mostly in terms of the poor? What color are we talking about? It's pretty obvious, isn't it?
Yeah, we talk about the black, but there's also the poor white
Yeah.
who may not be able to get his job at the factory because a black man has it or something.
Okay.
See, he doesn't have the poor doesn't have the insulation that we white privilege. I don't want that insulation, but I've got it because it just comes with how I live.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Janice.
The insulation was provided to you free.
Insulation.
Bobby?
When I think of insulation and let's say a middle class white person or working class, blue collar, shower at night instead of the morning, that kind of blue collar. Okay, so if I'm thinking about that, I'm thinking about if I'm a mom and I want to get a baby, a doll for my baby, I can pretty much find a white one. If I go to the magazine and I want some makeup, I can pretty much find any kind of makeup I want for me.
Mhm.
If I go to TV and I watch 5 sitcoms, which I might do during COVID, you know,
Right.
then I would say, unless it's called a black sitcom or one that is touted as, wow, look, we have 4 people of color on it, I'm going to see my face there. If I go to a restaurant and there's something in my food, if I go see a manager, possibly that manager is going to be the same color I am as a working class person. And so when I think about insulation of a white person, then I'm thinking about those things that we don't even think of when we're in it, that we see in the media, we see in the newspaper, we see in everything. That's what I think of if I'm talking about insulation.
Okay. Thank you, Bobby. Any other comments along that line? Well, you know, the interesting thing is when we look at our social environment as white people, the environment protects us. Now, how does it protect us? Well, as a group, we have institutions, we have culture, we have media, we have school textbooks, we have movies, we have advertising. Now, you know, I was thinking as Bobby was talking about maybe a TV show, you know, I've said to folks, you know, when the news gets too heavy for you during these times and things are just, you know, what am I going to do? And I'm just feeling kind of hopeless. Turn on TV and watch a Hallmark movie. They're very predictable. It's a script that kind of works for all of them. You're going to have this couple, you spot some guy and some woman at the beginning, and they're going to end up as a couple, and 8 minutes before the end of the movie, they're going to kiss, and they're going to live happily ever after. But you might also have a black person who is maybe the maitre d' in a restaurant, or maybe a police officer, or something else. They'll be the kind of a token, if you will. But in this Hallmark movie that makes us maybe feel good to watch it, and with this story that's so predictable, I don't know if the same thing could be said about someone who's black. because there's the token, there's 2 or 3 blacks in this movie and everybody else is white and everybody else is doing well. And you look at the textbooks, school textbooks, you know, as a student, a black child who's going to school and taking history, who are you going to be studying? You're going to be studying space heroes when we walked on the moon. You're going to be talking about presidents of the United States, and there was one black president. You're going to be talking about scientists. How many black scientists are there that we study? And it goes on and on. And in the culture, our culture, where are the black examples in terms of our culture? And, you know, I'm working on my autobiography. And so there was a story I was really looking for a couple of years ago. And so I read months and months of this newspaper, and they sent these papers up to me from Klamath Falls so I could go to my library here in Salem and watch look at these newspapers. But something I wasn't looking for, it would say, Negro kills someone. Negro arrested for being drunk in a public place. Negro sentenced to prison. And so this is the media now. And that's what those people that grew up in my time read in the newspaper. Today, though, we've perhaps moved past that and are maybe a little more subtle about it. But we don't see Negro did this or black person did this. It's perhaps, you know, you've got to get down in the story a bit. And somebody who's Hispanic, you know, just a name tells you something there. And so this is a case of institutions and social environment that tends to protect people who are have the same color as most of us. Now, what interruptions expose our white fragility and our racial anxiety? Vocabulary is important. It's very important. Is that, do we speak as human beings, do we speak about us and they? Is that what we do? Us and they? And what do those words mean? Could we use, perhaps instead, could we use we? We. Words like urban, inner city, disadvantaged, suburban, are all racially coded. When you hear somebody talk about, the urban problems, what does that mean? Or the inner city, there's a really good one. What's the inner city? What usually means you're going to have a whole bunch of blacks doing something they shouldn't be doing. There's gangs and there's cars that are broken into and all of that. And so we racially code certain words in our vocabulary. How often, and then compare that, how often do we use white over advantaged or privileged? How do we handle that? In terms of interruptions, how do we use anger? What about emotional incapacitation, guilt, argumentation, cognitive dissonance? How do we use those things as they are interruptions? So the question then that comes to us is, how might progressive whites respond to these interruptions? Now, I mentioned one, and that was us and they, and maybe make that and start talking about we. And I can tell you something else too, that in terms of being tongue-tied. Last week when Yvette was with us, and we spent some time with Yvette the Tuesday before our Thursday conversation, we talked about African Americans versus blacks. And she made the comment, she said, I've never been to Africa. And so then I mentioned and I've got quite a lot of Italian blood in me. I've never been to Italy, but nobody calls me Italian American. Now, at some points in our history, we have had people call, well, those are Irish, the Irish, and that sort of thing. But almost never do you hear whites hyphenated. And so, you know, Yvette said, you know, for her, she prefers to be called black, as we're called whites. Now, there might be somebody else who's black who would prefer to be called African Americans. That's a matter of choice. But that's something I think we want to think about and maybe talk about. And so that's where we are right now, I think. And I'd like to suggest as we go out to our first breakout room, let me just throw this question to you. How have you felt about having conversations about race and racism? How have you felt about having conversations about race and racism? Now, Greg mentioned the Thanksgiving table that will be coming up in a few weeks. How would you feel? Would you be comfortable if that subject came up in your family? Is there an Uncle Bob in the family where maybe you really don't want to get Uncle Bob going? That could be also Aunt Gladys for that matter. But you know, how would you handle that? So how have you reacted when somebody wants to